My son called me yesterday, his voice so frigid it felt like it could freeze the phone line. "Pack your bags. I've sold your house and property. Tomorrow I'm taking you to a nursing home." I wasn't crying or scared. Instead, I sat calmly and composed in a notary's office, surrounded by the heavy scent of old books and the soft click-clack of typewriters. "I understand your hurry, son," I replied, my voice barely a whisper piercing the icy silence. "But you've forgotten something important." His reaction was a roaring disbelief that stung even through the phone line. "What are you talking about, you old fool?" I laughed, a dry, sad laugh, as I sealed the document that saved not just a piece of paper, but my entire life, my memories, my legacy. In that moment, the phone in one hand, the heavy seal in the other, a strange mix of sadness and relentless relief washed over me. The voice of my own blood, the child I had carried on my shoulders and raised with so much love and hope, was now spitting venom and contempt. The notary's assistant, a young man with serious eyes, looked at me with a mix of astonishment and quiet pity. But I didn't want pity. What I wanted was justice. A justice hard-earned and long fought. This document, which I had just sealed, was my unwavering guarantee, my impenetrable shield against the greed of the one I had once taught his first steps, his first words, the first lessons of life. My name is Thomas Albright, and I'm 78 years old. I was born and raised in a small picturesque town named Willow Creek, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York. My whole life, I worked as a state land surveyor, a profession that taught me not only to know, but to love every square foot of this region. I knew the hidden springs, the ancient oaks that had stood for centuries, the stories that every stone seemed to tell. Today, I still live on the same property I bought over 40 years ago, in the prime of my life. Here, I planted every single tree that now provides shade in the yard and a home for birds. Here, I raised my only son, Michael, after my beloved wife, Eleanor, God rest her soul, passed away much too soon 12 years ago. I am a widower. My joints ache from rheumatism, especially on damp days, but my mind is clear and sharper than many young people out there who think they've already figured out the world. It wasn't an easy road to get here, I assure you. Every step was hard-fought, every success the result of tireless work. I've worked incredibly hard my entire life to build and maintain what I call my own. When I started my career as a surveyor, in my younger years, I rode across vast lands, under scorching sun and pouring rain, meticulously checking property lines, often marked only by old stones or almost forgotten trees, and recording every minor irregularity with meticulous precision. I slept in drafty barns, ate cold food I'd prepared on the go, and spent countless sleepless nights organizing documents and writing reports. I saved dollar after dollar, like a squirrel hoarding nuts for winter, to buy this special piece of land that had captured my heart from the very beginning. I funded my son's college education by selling fruit from my own garden early mornings on weekends, my hands often still wet with dew as the town slowly woke up. I renovated the house, this home that holds so many memories, not once, not twice, but 3 times with my own sweat and strength. And when I retired, I thought I could finally rest, enjoy the fruits of my labor, and age in peace. But greed, my friends, has big eyes, and sometimes settles right under the same roof as us, without us even realizing it. Before I continue my story, I want to sincerely thank the Grandparents' Voices channel for giving me this rare and valuable opportunity to share my experiences, my joys and pains, my whole truth with you. And I ask you, who are watching now, to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, comment, from where in this wide world you are watching, and what time it is for you, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this important message. Every day, grandparents' voices brings a new story from people like me who have much to teach from life's stumbling blocks. What happened after that shocking call made me painfully understand that sometimes the wisdom of years stored in our hearts and minds is the only legacy no one can steal, no matter how hard they try. And that is exactly the story I want to tell you now, with all its details and nuances, so you understand how life sometimes takes its own unexpected paths. I was born in 1947, not in a hospital, but in a small log cabin by the banks of the Mohawk River, whose gentle murmur was my first lullaby. My father was a simple, honest farmer, whose hands were marked by working the earth, and my mother an exceptionally talented seamstress, one of those women who created true works of art with needle and thread, without any patterns, just with her eye and feel for fabric. We were 6 siblings, a large, lively family, and I was the youngest, the latecomer, always cared for by everyone. Even as a child, I learned that paper was a serious, almost sacred thing. I watched my father carefully store every little receipt, every handwritten note, every official document in an old biscuit tin on the top shelf of the cupboard. "Paper is like gold, son," he would repeat emphatically. "Keep it safe. One day it will save you." And how right he was, as it would later turn out. I studied for as long as I could, soaking up knowledge like a sponge. Back then, a boy from the country who graduated high school was almost considered a doctor, a true scholar in our circles. But I had an extraordinary talent for numbers, an infallible memory that people called elephantine. I remembered everything: names, exact dates, precise locations, and especially the long, complicated document numbers that were just incomprehensible symbols to others. At 18, I passed the demanding state land surveyor exam, finishing second in my class. That was my greatest pride, and my family's too. As a surveyor, my life was literally on the road. I woke up long before the sun kissed the horizon, when the world was still asleep. I took my worn leather kajishol, a gift from my godfather, that had seen many journeys. I filled my thermos with strong, hot coffee that kept me awake, and rode out on Windrunner, a beautiful, light brown horse that faithfully accompanied me for 15 long years and knew every little turn. Later came the motorcycle, which gave me even more freedom, and it wasn't until the 1980s that I got my first pickup truck, a real status symbol back then. The whole region, every farmer, every landowner knew me and my tireless work. "Here comes Mr. Albright to check the boundaries," they would say, respectfully when they saw me in the distance, and I would arrive with my ruler, my measuring tape, and the law on my tongue. My work was complicated and demanded the highest precision. I had to check if the properties were the correct size, exactly according to the old documents, if no one was secretly moving fences to gain a few more feet of land, if the sensitive, protected areas, so vital for nature, were truly respected. Many people got angry when I checked on them. There were landowners who threatened me with a rifle, wanting to defend their land by all means. But I always did everything within the law, without favoring or disadvantaging anyone. Over time, I earned an unshakable reputation and deep respect. When I arrived at a place, the owner would already be there with the papers in hand, a sign of trust. "Mr. Albright, everything's in order. You can check it." And I checked it anyway, because a respected surveyor relies not just on words, but on facts and precise measurements. I met my wife, Eleanor, at a lively square dance at the county fair in 1970, a festival that brought the whole community together every year. She was a young, dedicated teacher at the local school who had come with a fresh breeze and new ideas from far-off Boston to teach in our peaceful Willow Creek. She was a pretty girl with fair skin, long black hair that reached her waist, and she always wore an intoxicating lavender perfume that you could smell from afar, and that immediately captivated me. We courted for a whole year, spending countless hours walking through the fields and long conversations under the starry sky. Finally, we married in the town's main church, a beautiful day I still remember fondly, and moved into a small rented apartment near the bustling town square, where our life together began. We worked hard, saving every single penny, with great discipline and living modestly, until I finally bought our little piece of land in 1982, 5 acres of pure happiness, with a gurgling spring that never ran dry. Some old, gnarled apple trees that bore sweet fruit, and a simple but charming house that, however, desperately needed renovation. Michael was born in 1975, our only son, an intelligent, bright boy who, even as a child, had a fondness for the finer, often expensive things in life. If his friends were content with a simple ice cream cone, he wanted the finest ice cream from the city. If others craved an ordinary bicycle, he dreamed of a shiny dirt bike he saw in magazines. Eleanor spoiled him far too much. She always said she didn't want him to go through the difficulties and hardships we had experienced in our youth. I tried in vain to teach him the true value of hard work and modesty, but it was hard to fight against a mother's boundless love and indulgence. We sacrificed an incredible amount for him, giving everything we had and sometimes even more. When he reached school age, we enrolled him in the best private school in Willow Creek, even if it meant tightening our belts even more and turning every dollar twice. On weekends, I would get up early, even before the rooster crowed, to harvest fruit in the garden and sell it at the farmer's market. Eleanor baked delicious pies and hearty, homemade bread to supplement our meager income. During vacations, instead of resting and enjoying well-deserved leisure time, I took on extra surveying jobs for wealthy landowners in the region, all to ensure Michael had the best life could offer. When he studied law at the prestigious University of Pennsylvania, we reluctantly sold the old motorcycle I had cherished for years, and an additional small piece of land to pay for the expensive dorm and the countless books he needed for his studies. Eleanor drove to Philadelphia every week, often in pouring rain or bitter cold, to bring him home-cooked meals that tasted of home and clean clothes. She returned late at night on the last bus, tired but always with a smile on her lips. I worked overtime, took any kind of work that came my way, no matter how strenuous. We even skimped on sugar for coffee to send Michael some extra money so he wouldn't have to limit himself. During this time, I started my nursery, first just as a hobby, a way to clear my head after strenuous work and get my hands in the dirt. But soon, I discovered I had an exceptionally good knack for it. I started with common plants, ferns, spider plants, and snake plants, but over time, I specialized in the native plants from the Willow Creek region that I knew so well. I learned to make cuttings and grafts, and how to care for each species with the utmost care. The nursery grew steadily, and by the 1990s, I was already selling plants to the town council and some of the larger estates in the region that needed to reforest degraded areas. The property also continuously improved. Little by little, we renovated the house, built a solid barn, dug a deep well, all with great effort, sweat, and meticulous planning. Every brick of this place, every nail, every wooden plank had a story to tell, had been laid by our hands. Every tree had been planted by our hands, a symbol of our love and our hope. When I retired in 2007, we already owned a beautiful, productive, and extremely valuable property, a true paradise. Michael completed his studies and began working as an attorney in New York City, a successful, respected man. He met Sarah, a young, ambitious woman from Chicago, who was also an attorney. They married in 2005 at a celebration that swallowed 3 years of our hard-earned savings. They wanted only the best, an opulent banquet at a famous, expensive restaurant, a live band that played until the early hours, and decorations that could have come straight out of a glossy magazine. Eleanor said it was her biggest dream to see her son marry like that. So I grudgingly agreed, even though it seemed far too extravagant to me, and I would have preferred to save the money. It was in 2013 when Eleanor left us far too soon and unexpectedly, an aggressive cancer that took her much too quickly. There wasn't even time to prepare for this terrible loss. 1 month she was well, the next already in the hospital, and only 3 months later she passed away. It was as if a huge piece of myself had been torn out. For 43 long years, we had built dreams together, made plans, and suddenly I was alone on this property that was so full of memories of her. The plants in the nursery became my salvation, my anchor in deep sorrow. As I cared for them daily, I spoke to Eleanor, telling her news from the property, asking her for advice as if she were still with me. It might sound like the madness of an old, lonely man, but it was what kept me on my feet, what gave me a reason to get up every morning. Michael and Sarah visited me occasionally, always in a great hurry, as if rushing from one important appointment to the next. He had opened his own law firm and quickly made a name for himself in the city, becoming more successful, more respected. Yet I noticed how he began to change his way of speaking, his clothes, his way of looking at the simple things on the property, as if they were suddenly foreign to him. During the rare visits, he complained about the summer heat, the dust on the paths, the poor internet connection, as if the property was a place full of flaws. Sarah cursed country living, saying she was allergic to everything from the countryside, as if nature itself were her enemy. It was about 2 years ago that I began to note the strange, probing questions he asked me. Dad, where are the property deeds for the estate anyway? Dad, have you thought about selling this place and moving to the city where you won't be so alone? Dad, don't you think you're too lonely in this middle of nowhere, completely without company? At first, I didn't pay much attention, considering it the usual, albeit somewhat clumsy, concern of a son. But when Michael, one day, brought a realtor friend for lunch without warning, and the guy brazenly walked around the property, taking photos and diligently writing notes, that's when I became suspicious, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. Everything began to become clearer after that strange visit from the realtor, like a fog lifting. I noticed that my son had fundamentally changed the way he spoke to me on the phone. Instead of the usual quick, often hurried calls, he suddenly started calling me every week, asking in detail about my health, whether I was taking my medication correctly, whether I felt lonely in my big house. At first, I even thought it was the sincere concern of a son who had finally realized his father was getting older and needed more attention. But soon, it became painfully clear to me that there was something else entirely behind this sudden, exaggerated interest, something sinister that he was trying to hide. It was a mild Thursday in March when Michael unexpectedly showed up on the property without announcing himself beforehand. He arrived in a new, shiny car, one of those expensive, imported vehicles that cost as much as a small estate in our region. He came alone, without Sarah, which was very unusual and made me suspicious. He even brought a box of my favorite chocolates from the city, a gesture he hadn't made in years. He sat with me on the porch where the sun shone warmly. He slowly drank his coffee without looking at his watch, as he always did, as if he suddenly had infinite time. He talked about the law firm, about complicated cases, about faraway trips. Then, quite casually, he cast his bait. "Dad, have you ever thought that this property is too much work for you? All the upkeep, the countless plants, the animals that need so much care. At your age, you finally deserve peace, a quieter, more comfortable place with people who can lovingly care for you." I pretended not to understand what he was getting at, playing ignorant. I told him about David, who came 3 times a week to help me with the heavy work, and who was a great support. I told him about the nursery plants, which were my greatest joy and passion. I told him that I had never felt better, that the doctor himself had said I was as healthy as a 60-year-old man. Michael then skillfully changed tactics, began to talk extensively about the alleged financial difficulties he was facing, that competition in the legal profession had become increasingly strong, that large, important clients were switching to other, larger firms, that his office urgently needed renovation, which would incur enormous costs. He spoke about the children's expensive private school, about the high financing of the new car, about the oppressive mortgage on the apartment. He subtly hinted that he urgently needed help, but didn't ask directly, playing the proud man. "You know, I would never ask you for anything, Dad, but I'm very worried about the future, about giving my children what you and Mom gave me with so much love and sacrifice." In that moment, my father's heart spoke louder than any doubt. I offered him my help. I told him I had some savings I could lend him, interest-free, simply out of love. He thanked me fleetingly, but immediately changed the subject. He said it wasn't fair, that he would find another solution. And then quite suddenly, he dropped the bombshell that almost stopped my heart. "Actually, Dad, I have a very concrete proposal. I met a very wealthy businessman from Miami who is very interested in buying land in the region to build a luxurious resort. He would pay a very, very good price for the property, well above its alleged market value. With that money, you could buy a comfortable apartment in the city, close to us, where we could see each other more often. And there would still be a good sum left over to live peacefully and carefree." I confess that, for a second, this idea even made sense. Me, an old man, alone on a large property, far from my son and my beloved grandchildren. The money would be well invested, and the thought of being near family was tempting, almost comforting, but something didn't feel right. A quiet sense of unease. I asked how high the offer was. When he told me, I knew with absolute certainty that something was wrong. It was less than half of what the property was actually worth, considering its privileged location directly on the spring with its own water supply, the fertile soils, and the impeccable documentation. "That value was well below market value, son," I said calmly but firmly. "If this businessman is really interested in building such a large resort here, he would pay at least double without hesitation." Then I saw a brief, dark shadow cross his face. A nervousness he tried to hide with a hasty gulp of coffee. A telltale moment. Michael quickly changed the subject, trying to distract me. He said he would think about other options, that he only wanted what was best for me, but I had already seen enough. His true intentions were clear to me. The next day, even before breakfast, I called Tony, the son of my old friend Arthur, who worked at the county recorder's office in the city and was a trustworthy young man. I asked him to check if anything unusual had been registered in my name recently, any unusual document. He called me back 2 hours later, his voice filled with concern. "Mr. Albright, there's a power of attorney here that gives your son full authority to negotiate the property. It was notarized with your signature at a New York City notary public. It was as if someone had punched me in the stomach. A power of attorney with my signature that I had never signed. I had never seen such a thing, let alone signed it, and immediately emailed me a copy, which I asked David to print at the small store on the corner. When I saw the document, I recognized the signature. It resembled mine, but had subtle, telltale details that immediately caught my eye. Someone had forged it, and that someone, I was sure, could only be my own son. Mr. Albright, there's something else," Tony continued on the phone, his voice full of regret. "A purchase agreement is already underway. The buyer's company has already transferred a 30% down payment to a joint account. The rest was to be paid at the final signing next week." In that moment, my legs gave out. I had to cling to the table to keep from collapsing. My son, my only son, had not only forged my signature, but also sold the property behind my back. The place where his mother had lived, where he had grown up, where all our precious memories were, and at a value well below market value, which made me suspect that there was some dirty, illegal business going on that I knew nothing about. It was the same day I received an unexpected call from Martha Jenkins, a former colleague from the office who had retired a few years ago and opened her own accounting firm. She called excitedly, her voice trembling slightly. "Thomas, I'm sorry to interfere, but I think you absolutely need to know. Your son was here with his wife, asking how to transfer large sums of money abroad without attracting the attention of the IRS. He said it was an inheritance you had left them. It seemed very strange to me because, as far as I know, you are still very much alive and well." The puzzle pieces quickly began to fit together. A terrifying picture emerged before my eyes. They weren't just selling the property to cover their debts. They were planning to disappear with the money, flee abroad, and probably put me in some cheap, remote nursing home, since Michael had mentioned a place with people who could care for me, as if I were a bothersome piece of furniture. I spent the whole night sleepless, tossing and turning in bed, unable to form a clear thought, pondering what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Michael immediately, scream at him, ask him how he had the nerve to do such a thing to his own father, who had given him everything. Another part desperately wanted to understand where I had made such a fundamental mistake in his upbringing. What had I done to deserve such a deep betrayal? But a third, the most rational part of my mind, knew that I had to act intelligently, not emotionally. Revenge was not a solution, but just another path to destruction. The next morning, I called Dr. Harrison, a retired lawyer who had been my esteemed neighbor for many years before moving to the city. I told him everything, showed him the disturbing documents. He listened in silence with a serious expression, and then said firmly, "Thomas, this is a crime. Document forgery, fraud, attempted embezzlement. Your son can go to jail for this." I didn't want to see my son in jail, despite everything. That thought tore at my heart. But I also couldn't let him steal from me like this, trample on my life's work. Dr. Harrison gave me precise instructions, a plan that was my last hope. Here's what we'll do. First, we'll register a temporary restraining order with the county recorder's office, blocking all transactions concerning the property. Then we'll go to the notary to report the forgery of the power of attorney. Finally, we'll inform the buying company about the fraud, so they withdraw from the deal. We followed the plan meticulously, step by step, without hesitation. Early Monday, I was at the county recorder's office, registering the necessary documents, my heart pounding with tension. The recorder, an old acquaintance who had known me for decades, was shocked by the situation when I told him everything. He arranged everything immediately with the highest priority. While we were completing the formalities, my cell phone rang. It was Michael. "Dad, everything all right? I called you yesterday, and you didn't answer?" I tried to keep my voice firm and calm, as if nothing had happened, and if the world were still in order. I was tending to the plants in the nursery. The battery must have been dead. I'm just in town, taking care of a few things. He seemed relieved. His tone became lighter. "Oh, good. Listen, I'm thinking of coming here tomorrow with Sarah and the kids. I have some good news for you." "What good news, son?" I asked, though I already knew exactly what it was about, and my heart pounded with anger and disappointment. "Tomorrow we'll talk quietly. Just pack your bags. I need you to come to the city with me. I've found a great place for you where you won't have to worry about a thing." Then I could no longer pretend I knew nothing. The mask fell. "Michael, you sold my property behind my back." An icy silence spread on the other end of the line. Then a nervous, almost hysterical laugh. "What are you saying, Dad? Of course not. Where did you get that absurd idea?" "I'm here at the county recorder's office right now, Michael. I've seen the forged power of attorney. I've seen the purchase agreement. I know everything." A longer, agonizing silence. When he spoke again, his voice was different. No longer the nervous laugh, but cold, calculating, like a stranger's. "Look, Dad, I did this for your own good. You're no longer able to live alone. That's obvious. It'll be better for everyone. You'll have a comfortable place in the city, with people your age who can care for you. The money will be well managed. I'll invest it wisely to secure your future. And forging my signature, was that for my own good too, my dear son?" I couldn't hide my irony. It was necessary. "You would never have agreed to the sale. You're too stubborn, too old-fashioned, but at your age, you're no longer able to decide what's best." Those words cut into my heart like sharp knives. My own son thought I was incapable, an old fool who no longer had the right to decide about my own life and my hard-earned property. "Michael, I just blocked the sale at the county recorder's office. I've reported the forgery of the power of attorney. We've already informed the buyer's company about the fraud. The deal is off." Then he literally exploded. His words were so aggressive and full of hatred that the recorder, sitting on the other side of the room, looked up startled and gazed at me with concern. Michael continued to scream, threatened, said I would bitterly regret it, that I would waste the only chance for a decent old age, that I would die alone in this God-forsaken middle of nowhere. I just listened, with a broken heart, but with the unshakable certainty that I was doing the right thing, no matter how painful it was. When he finally hung up, I trembled, not from fear, but from deep, incomprehensible sadness. How could a son whom I had loved so much, for whom I had made so many sacrifices, to whom I had given everything, treat me like this, betray me so? What had happened to the boy I had taught to walk, to speak, to be honest, and the meaning of respect? He was no longer there, just a shadow of his former self. That night, I returned to the property with a bitter mix of relief and deep pain. Relief at having prevented the fraudulent sale, pain over the incomprehensible betrayal of my own son. I sat on the porch, looking at the sprawling orchard I had planted with my own hands, at the nursery I had built brick by brick, plant by plant, and made a fateful decision. This couldn't remain as it was. This betrayal could not go unpunished. I had to do more than just prevent the fraud. I had to ensure that my assets, the result of a lifetime of hard, honest work, would not be squandered and destroyed at the first opportunity that arose. But what I didn't know then was that the worst was yet to come, a blow that would turn my life upside down once again. Michael's reaction to my discovery was even more radical, even more ruthless than I had imagined in my worst nightmares. The day after our bitter conversation, he reappeared on the property, this time not alone, but accompanied by two strangers I had never seen before. One introduced himself as a psychiatrist, the other as a social worker. Michael had a bulging folder full of papers in his hand, his eyes glowing with determination. "Dad, these gentlemen have come to assess your mental state. I am filing for an official declaration of incapacitation. You are clearly no longer able to manage your own assets." I was paralyzed for a few seconds. My thoughts raced. Incapacitation. This was the final, perfidious blow. To legally declare me incompetent, then to take full, unrestricted control of all my assets. The audacity, the brazenness of this action was so incredible that I almost laughed, yet I remained calm and composed. "Certainly, doctor," I said with a firm voice that betrayed no trace of fear. "I am available for any examination, but first, I would like to show you and your colleague something very important." I went into my room, my steps slow and deliberate, and returned with another equally bulging folder. In it, my triumph, a complete medical report, compiled just 2 weeks earlier at the renowned Columbia University Medical Center in New York City. It contained detailed neurological, geriatric, and psychiatric assessments that attested to my full mental capacity, my autonomy, and my ability to make decisions without any doubt. This report had been the brilliant idea of Dr. Harrison, who had far-sightedly anticipated that something so abominable could happen and that I needed to prepare. This report was registered at the notary's office last week and is therefore official. I also have an official declaration from the regional police chief confirming my report of document forgery against my son and keeping it in their files. The doctor Michael had brought examined the documents attentively, his eyes scanning the lines. His face changed completely. The initial arrogance gave way to deep uncertainty. He turned to Michael. His voice lost its professional tone. "Mr. Albright, you didn't mention that your father already had such a comprehensive and recent examination. This report is very detailed, signed by renowned specialists, and leaves no room for doubt." My son's face turned bright red with anger and shame. He began to scream that I had prepared everything, that I had deceived the doctors, that I was senile and paranoid. He even tried to snatch the documents from the bewildered doctor's hand. In this critical moment, my second trump card, my secret weapon, appeared. David, who had worked faithfully with me and on the property for many years, and was my right-hand man, entered the room, accompanied by Mrs. Miller, my wise neighbor. Behind them stood Sheriff Peterson of the state police, who happened to be Mrs. Miller's son and was visiting his mother that weekend. "Mr. Albright, we heard the loud screaming from outside. Is everything all right?" David asked, looking suspiciously at the strangers Michael had brought with him. Sheriff Peterson, though on vacation and in civilian clothes, stepped closer, his eyes scanning the situation. "Is there a problem here? I received a report of possible coercion against an elderly person." The report had been filed by Mrs. Miller, who had been alerted by me the day before, and had instructed her observant son to watch the movements on the property. Michael tried desperately to explain himself. He said it was just a friendly visit, that he was very worried about his father's health. But the damage was already done. His lies were obvious. The psychiatrist and the social worker quickly realized that they had been used in a deceitful attempt at fraud, and their faces turned ashen. They apologized hastily and quickly retreated, visibly ashamed of their involuntary involvement. When we were alone, Michael sank onto a chair, defeated and desperate. His body seemed to have lost all strength. "Why are you doing this to me, Dad? Why don't you just make it easier? Just give in." His voice was full of reproach. "Make what easier, Michael? Let you steal from me? Let you declare me incompetent? Hand over the fruit of a lifetime of honest work for you to spend on luxury cars, expensive trips, and your extravagant life? Was that easier for you? You've always been serious, only clinging to material things. That's the only thing that matters to you. It's not about the material value, son. It's about moral value, about respect, about honesty. Things I tried to teach you a lifetime with so much love and patience." He stood up angrily, his eyes blazing. "You'll regret this. This won't stay this way. You'll see." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that an old picture fell from the wall. It was an old, yellowed photo of the three of us, me, Eleanor, and Michael, when he was still an innocent child of about 10 years old. His laughter so pure and carefree. The glass shattered into countless small pieces, like an ominous omen of what would happen to our family, a fracture that was difficult to mend. In the following days, Michael tried everything in his power. He hired another, even more expensive lawyer to challenge the blocking of the sale, but without success. He spread rumors throughout the town that I suffered from Alzheimer's, that some days I couldn't even remember my own name. He even tried to bribe Tony from the county recorder's office with a large sum of money to release the sale. But nothing worked. My precautions were too good. Meanwhile, I did not remain idle, but forged my own plan. With the tireless help of Dr. Harrison, I registered a detailed statement at the county recorder's office about all the fraudulent attempts my son had made, a complete documentation of his schemes. I transferred a significant portion of my savings to a new account at another bank, to which Michael had no access under any circumstances. With the help of Mrs. Miller's son, who was a security technology expert, I installed surveillance cameras throughout the property to record any unusual events. And then I made the most difficult, most painful decision of my life. I filed a formal complaint against my own son for attempted fraud and document forgery. The news spread like wildfire in Small Willow Creek. People looked at me with a bitter mix of pity and secret admiration when I went to town, whispering behind their hands. Many came to tell me similar heartbreaking stories of children who tried to seize their elderly parents' homes, of bitter inheritance disputes even before death, of families broken by all-destroying greed. I realized that my story, unfortunately, was not unique, but a sad reflection of human weaknesses. The straw that broke the camel's back came 2 weeks later, unexpectedly and shockingly. I received a call from Michael's secretary, a young, friendly woman named Emily, who had always treated me with respect on the few occasions I had been to his office. "Mr. Albright, I'm sorry to interfere, but I think you absolutely need to know. Mr. Michael is in serious, very serious trouble. He took money from clients for investments he never made. He used it for his gambling debts. He used the amount of the down payment from the sale of your property to plug part of the huge hole. But there's still a lot of money missing. There are people threatening to report him, and even more serious threats from criminals. He's desperate. He doesn't know where to turn." That suddenly explained many things. The enormous hurry to sell the property, the blind fury when I prevented it, the increasingly desperate attempts to declare me incompetent. It wasn't just greed. It was deep existential despair. My son was up to his neck in debt, probably the sad result of a lifetime of bragging beyond his means, a life built on lies. Despite everything he had done to me, my father's heart ached. I couldn't leave my son in such a hopeless predicament, however bad his behavior had been, however deeply he had hurt me. But I also couldn't just give up everything I had built in my life to plug holes caused by his mismanagement, his lies, and his dishonesty. I called the office and asked Emily to speak to him urgently. Emily said he wasn't there. He had traveled to Las Vegas to sort out some problems. Her voice sounded worried. I left an urgent message for him to call me immediately. That afternoon, I received an unexpected and, for me, very unusual visit. It was Sarah, my daughter-in-law, accompanied by my 2 grandchildren, Jacob, 14 years old, and Olivia, 11 years old. It was rare for her to come to the property, even rarer for her to bring the children, who usually found country life boring. She seemed nervous. Her dark circles were deep and dark, her face pale. "Thomas, I urgently need to speak with you alone. The children can play in the orchard and pass the time." As soon as the grandchildren were outside, enjoying the freedom of the garden, Sarah collapsed on the sofa and wept bitterly, her shoulders trembling. "I'm desperate, Thomas. Michael has been gone for 3 days. He took all our savings, the credit cards, even the valuable jewelry I inherited from my grandmother. He left a short, cold letter saying he would sort everything out, that he would return soon. But he's not answering his phone. His number is dead." She then told me that it was only at that moment she had discovered their true, terrifying financial situation. The horrendous gambling debts, the countless loans in the firm's name, the embezzled client money, and the secret attempt to sell my property without my consent to cover these debts. I swear to you, I knew nothing about this. Thomas. Michael always handled the finances. He said I shouldn't worry, that everything was fine. I believed him, trusted him blindly. As much as I had my doubts about how much she really knew and how deeply she was involved in Michael's schemes, I couldn't help but feel deep pity, especially for my innocent grandchildren, who were not to blame for their father's devastating decisions. What will you do now, Sarah? I don't know, Thomas. The house in the city is mortgaged to the hilt. The bank has already stated they will foreclose. The car was repossessed by the creditor yesterday. Everything is gone. I'm afraid they'll come for the furniture too, for the children's things, for everything. And dangerous people are looking for him. People who lent money outside the banking system, if you understand. People you shouldn't mess with. She didn't need to explain further. Those words were enough. Criminal lenders. The situation was even worse than I had imagined in my worst nightmares. Then I had an idea. A spark of hope. A solution that didn't solve everything, but at least gave my grandchildren and Sarah security for the moment, while the storm of misfortune raged. Sarah, there's a small house on the back of the property. It was where the foreman used to live before David moved to the city and built his own house. It's been empty for years, but it's clean and has the bare necessities for living. You can stay there until things calm down, for as long as you want. She looked at me surprised, her eyes wide. After everything Michael has done to you, after all the betrayal, you still want to help us? I'm not doing it for Michael, Sarah. I'm doing it for my grandchildren, who are not to blame for their father's decisions, and for you, who was apparently also deceived and used an innocent party. That same afternoon, I helped Sarah and the children settle into the small back house. It was simple, but it had everything necessary to live a dignified life. 2 cozy rooms, a small kitchen, a bathroom, a small park where they could spend their evenings. David brought a new, energy-efficient stove from the city to keep the house warm. Bought comfortable mattresses and fresh bedding. In a few hours, we transformed the modest place into a temporary but loving home. Jacob and Olivia, my grandchildren, were initially scared and unsettled by the sudden change, but at the same time excited by the sprawling property that promised so many adventures. It was rare for them to visit me, and they never stayed longer than a few hours. Now they had all the time in the world to get to know everything, to explore every corner. The lush orchard, the fragrant nursery, the clear stream that cut through the back of the property, inviting them to play. That night, sitting on the main house's porch, under the twinkling starry sky, Sarah told me more disturbing details about the catastrophic situation. Michael had secretly started gambling a few years ago, first sporadically, just to pass the time, but then more and more frequently, and with increasingly higher stakes. He lost immeasurable sums of money, took out loans to cover the losses, which spiraled out of control. Then he used client trust money to cover the loans. A vicious cycle that dragged him deeper and deeper into the abyss, only growing worse. He has changed so much, Thomas. I don't know when it happened, when he took this wrong path, but he is no longer the man I married, the one I loved. Sometimes I look at him and just don't recognize him. It's as if a stranger is standing before me. I couldn't help but think of my beloved Eleanor, and how devastated she would have been to see what our only son had become. The disappointment would have been immeasurable. 2 long, agonizing weeks passed with no news from Michael. Sarah filed a missing person report with the police, but the officers had no useful leads. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. Creditors began to show up, first at the abandoned law firm, then at her house in the city. Some even came to the secluded property. But Sheriff Peterson, who had become an important and loyal ally, made sure no one crossed the property lines and threatened my family. It was a rainy Thursday when the phone rang, an unexpected call that made my heart beat faster. It was Michael, at last. Dad, I urgently need your help. I'm in deep trouble that I can't solve alone. His voice was different, not arrogant and conceited like the last time we spoke, but broken, defeated, full of despair. Where are you, son? I'm very worried. in a cheap motel in Reno. I tried to run, but I ran out of money. I don't have a cent left. And there are people looking for me, very dangerous people, Dad. Your wife and children are here on the property. They're very worried about you, Michael. I know, Dad. Sarah told me. Thank you for taking care of them, of my family. I messed everything up, didn't I, Dad? I destroyed my life. For the first time, in a long time, I heard sincerity, even genuine remorse in his voice. It was no longer the arrogant lawyer trying to manipulate and defraud me, but a broken, desperate man, finally admitting his mistakes and at the end of his rope. What are you going to do now, Michael? I want to come back, fix what can be fixed, bear the consequences of what I have done. I don't want to run anymore. I thought for a long moment, my heart torn between anger and love. Despite everything he had done, he was still my son, my only child. Come home, son. We'll solve this together, no matter how hard it gets. 2 days later, in the early morning hours, Michael arrived at the property. He was completely defeated, emaciated to the bone, with an unkempt beard and empty eyes. When he saw his children, Jacob and Olivia, running towards him, he began to weep bitterly. His facade crumbled. He hugged Sarah for a long time, sobbing apologies for everything he had done to her and the children. That night, on the main house's porch, under the silent witness of the stars, he confessed everything he had done, without sugarcoating anything. The gambling debts, the massive embezzlement of funds, the desperate, fraudulent attempt to sell my property to plug the huge holes, and asked me, Sarah, and the children, who were already asleep, for forgiveness. I lost my way, Dad. I let myself be guided by greed, pride, and the desire for prestige. I wanted to have more than I could, to show others that I was successful, that I was special. And when I started losing, I didn't know how to stop. It was like a pull that dragged me deeper and deeper. I looked at my son and saw, for the first time in many, many years, humility and genuine remorse in his eyes. The arrogance that had dominated him for so long had given way to sincere, humble repentance. What are you going to do now, Michael? What's your plan? I'm going to turn myself in to the police tomorrow, Dad. I've committed several crimes. That's clear to me. Forgery, embezzlement, fraud. I will confess everything and accept the full consequences that life holds for me. I don't want to run anymore. And after that, I don't know if there's an after, Dad. I'll probably lose my law license. If I get the chance, I'll have to start from scratch again, with nothing. That night, as the moon shone brightly in the sky, I made a final decision. I couldn't pay for what my son had done, nor should I. He had to bear the bitter consequences of his actions. That was the only way to purification. But I could offer him a chance for a fresh start, a small spark of hope, when it was all over, when he had served his time. Michael, tomorrow we'll go to the station together. You'll turn yourself in, as you said, with your head held high. I'll be by your side, not as a lawyer, but as a father who is there for his son. I'll help Sarah and the children, take care of them while you're gone. And when you get out, when your time is up, you'll have a place to start anew, to build a new life. What kind of place, Dad? What are you talking about? Here on the property, there's enough land to share. It offers enough space for everyone. You can build your own small house on the other side of the creek, restart your life away from the city and its dangerous temptations. Work with the earth, as I have done my whole life with so much joy. He looked at me surprised, his eyes widening in disbelief. After everything I have done to you, after all the betrayal, you still want to give me a part of the property, Dad? I'm not giving it to you, son. I'm offering you a precious opportunity to regain your dignity, to find yourself again. The property is mine as long as I live, that's clear. But you can live and work here, learn a new profession, dedicate yourself to nature, and if you truly show that you have changed, that you have become an honest man, this land can one day be yours, not through fraud or trickery, but through merit, through hard work and sincere repentance. The next day, as agreed, I accompanied Michael to the police station in Willow Creek. He confessed everything he had done to the police chief, a serious but fair man who had known and respected me since childhood, without a single lie, without hiding anything. The consequences would be severe, that was clear to both of us. Probably a few years in prison, the permanent loss of his law license, and debts that would take many, many years to repay. But for the first time, I saw my son face his mistakes directly, without trying to manipulate or flee. He had become a broken but honest man. As they took him to his cell, he looked at me one last time, his eyes full of tears, but also full of hope. Dad, do you forgive me for everything? I forgive you, son, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Now it's time to rebuild, to start a new chapter. The news spread quickly in the small town. Mr. Albright's son, the respected lawyer who had tried to steal from his own father, had been arrested. Some came to express their sincere condolences, as if there had been a death in the family. In a way, there was the death of an illusion, a beautiful but false image I had of my son. But there was also a birth, the wonderful possibility of a new person rising from the ashes of error, stronger and wiser than before. Sarah decided to stay on the property with the children. At first, it was only meant to be temporary, a makeshift solution. But little by little, she got used to the simple but fulfilling life in the country. She found employment as a dedicated teacher at the local school, the same one where Eleanor had taught decades earlier. A beautiful twist of fate. Jacob and Olivia were enrolled in the local town school. They rode the school bus every morning, like so many other children from rural areas, their backpacks full of books and dreams. The creditors were still looking for Michael, but when they learned that he had turned himself in and there were no more assets to seize, most of them gave up, as there was nothing left to take. Some civil lawsuits were still ongoing, debts that would take years to repay, but at least the most dangerous threats ceased, and a certain calm returned. As for me, I found a deep inner peace that I hadn't expected after this terrible betrayal. My son's betrayal had deeply hurt me and left scars, but his courageous step to admit his mistakes and bear the consequences brought a form of redemption and healing. And having my beloved grandchildren near me, seeing them discover the wonders of simple country life, was a gift I never expected to receive in my old age. A true blessing. One day, as I was working with Jacob in the nursery, who had developed a real interest in plants and was so inquisitive, he asked me, "Grandpa, how did you know Dad would try to sell the property? How could you prepare so well?" I smiled, remembering the most important lesson my wise father had taught me in my childhood. "I didn't know, son," I said, as I showed him how to plant a young cutting. "But I learned as a child that paper is like gold. Keep it safe. One day it will save you. Your father unfortunately forgot that, but perhaps you won't forget it, my boy." 4 long years have already passed since my son turned himself into the police and began his new life. Much has changed since then, just as the seasons change and the river takes its course. Life sometimes has such unexpected twists and turns that you can never imagine, like a river that seems to flow straight, but suddenly makes an unexpected, dramatic bend. Michael served 2 years in an open prison, which meant he was allowed to work during the day. It could have been more. But the judge considered his spontaneous confession, his sincere remorse, and the fact that he had voluntarily surrendered. I visited him every week, in all weather. I brought him fresh produce from the property, told him family news and updates from the nursery. At first, he barely lifted his eyes to look at me. His shame was palpable. But over time, these weekly visits became a moment of rebuilding, a bridge between us. There, in those intense, hour-long conversations each week, I truly got to know my son. Not the spoiled child we had raised, nor the arrogant lawyer who had lost his way so badly, but the man he could become, the core of his soul. Michael used his time in prison to study intensely and further his education. He took courses in organic farming, advanced plant techniques, and the management of small rural properties. When he proudly showed me the shining certificates, I confess that my eyes filled with tears, tears of joy and pride. I saw there not only a genuine interest in nature, but also a deep plea for reconciliation, a desire to reconnect with me and the earth. He wanted to learn what I knew. He wanted to understand my world, my passion. Sarah and the children continued to live on the property. Their new home had become a place of peace. The back house, which was once just a temporary shelter, was expanded, lovingly renovated, and turned into a real home for them. Where it was once a temporary place, it became a true home, rooted in the earth. Sarah adapted well to life as a country teacher. She had a true calling for it, as Eleanor had, a talent she found here in the country. Jacob, my oldest grandson, became my right-hand man in the nursery. He has an exceptionally good knack for plants, a green thumb, as they say. He knows every species by its scientific name and knows exactly what it needs. Olivia, on the other hand, was more drawn to art. She spends hours drawing the delicate flowers, the majestic trees, the colorful birds that visit the property. An amazing talent I didn't even know existed in the family. Michael came out of prison 2 years ago, a changed man. As agreed, he built a new house on the other side of the creek. Nothing luxurious or ostentatious. A simple but beautiful and functional building that blended harmoniously into the landscape. He himself actively helped build the walls, lay the bricks. His hands were covered in mortar. Manual labor he would have despised before, but now performed with pride and dedication. Sarah and the children moved there as soon as it was finished, and a new, hopeful phase began for them. As I had imagined, he lost his law license. The State Bar Association revoked his license due to unethical conduct, a harsh but necessary blow. A man must face the consequences of his actions to truly change and cleanse his soul. Instead of working as an attorney, Michael began working with me in the nursery, learning the trade from the ground up, a trade he had disdained for so many years. At first, it was strange to see those hands, which once only knew pen and keyboard, now calloused from the earth and hard work. But little by little, he found pleasure in it, a new fulfillment. A year ago, we began to expand and modernize the nursery. It is no longer just an old man's hobby. It has become a flourishing family business. We exponentially increased the plant variety, offering a wider range of native and exotic plants. We began to supply large reforestation projects in the region, an important contribution to environmental protection. Michael brought in new, fresh ideas, set up a professional website, organized the entire administrative part with his legal precision. I contribute my rich experience, my immense knowledge of plants, of the cycles of nature, of what the earth needs. It is a partnership I never could have imagined in my wildest dreams, a harmonious symbiosis. The debts of the past still exist. They have not disappeared. Every month, a significant portion of our income goes to the creditors. It will take years for everything to be settled, a long road of atonement. But Michael places the highest importance on honoring and repaying every cent. He says it is part of his restitution, the painful process of rebuilding his dignity and cleansing his soul. The most surprising thing was to see how life on the property transformed my grandchildren, how nature shaped them. Jacob and Olivia grew up free, in contact with nature, learning values like honesty, modesty, and hard work that the city would hardly have taught them. Jacob has already firmly decided that he wants to study agricultural science to continue the important work we have begun, to manage the nursery. Olivia dreams of becoming a biologist or an artist. In any case, she says with sparkling eyes, she wants to paint the life within the plants, to capture the beauty of nature. Hearing that fills me with immense pride and deep hope for the future. As for me, I feel a peace, an inner peace of mind that I had thought impossible after this deep betrayal. Sure, there were difficult moments, sleepless nights, when I wondered where I had gone wrong in raising my son. Days when the pain still lay heavy on my chest and burdened my heart. But time, forgiveness, and the genuine, profound transformation I saw in Michael slowly but steadily healed those wounds. Today, at 82 years old, I wake up every morning feeling deep gratitude. Gratitude for still being alive, to see my son find his true path again. Gratitude and for my grandchildren growing up near me and learning the true value of the earth, honest work, and family. Gratitude for having the strength to bravely face this difficult situation instead of simply giving in and accepting defeat. If I could travel back in time and talk to the Thomas of 4 years ago, who was afraid of his son's betrayal and desperate, I would tell him, "It will hurt, yes, but it will pass. And what comes after will be better than you could ever imagine. It will strengthen you." Life has taught me much in these 82 years, but perhaps the most important, most profound lessons came precisely in the most difficult, darkest moments. I have learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting the mistake, but giving the opportunity to build something new, something better from it. I have learned that sometimes we have to lose something, lose everything, to find what is truly important in life: family, love, honesty. And I have learned that, however hard a betrayal may be, it does not have the power to define or destroy an entire life, an entire relationship. And Michael told me the other day, as we planted cuttings together in a new bed, his hands covered in dirt, "Dad, sometimes I think I had to lose everything to understand what really had value, what is truly important." These words echoed in my head for a long time. How many people spend their entire lives accumulating things, status, superficial appearances, without ever understanding what truly has value, what nourishes the soul? My property still belongs to me, as promised, but now it is much more than just a possession, much more than just land and house. It is the pulsating center of a reunited, healed family, the scene of an incredible story of redemption, forgiveness, and new beginnings. One day, when I am gone, I know it will be in good, loving hands not because of a piece of paper in the county recorder's office, but because I have planted something much more lasting than deeds and contracts. I have planted values, examples, lessons that I see blossoming every day in the faces of my children and grandchildren. If someone asks me if all that suffering, all that pain was worth it, I answer without hesitation, yes. Not because of the happy ending, which doesn't always happen in stories like mine, but because of the journey, because of the deep insights, because of the precious opportunity to see that even in the darkest hours, in the deepest abysses, the possibility of light, of hope, and of a new beginning always exists. And if there is one piece of advice I can give to someone going through something similar, struggling with betrayal and disappointment, it is this: don't let resentment and bitterness dictate your actions and harden your heart. Use the wisdom that the years have given you to protect what is yours, yes, but always leave a door open for true reconciliation, not one based on pretense or convenience, but one that arises from genuine, profound transformation and repentance that cleanses the heart and soul. Today, when I see Michael teaching Jacob how to graft plants with infinite patience, his hands skilled and full of knowledge, or when I hear Sarah telling captivating stories to attentive students under the shade of the apple tree, or when I see Olivia's beautiful drawings adorning the walls of the house and bringing the property to life, I know I made the right decision. It wasn't easy. It wasn't without pain and tears, but it was the only right path that allowed all of us to grow, to heal, and to rediscover ourselves. As the old saying goes, which my father always repeated, a good tree, even after it has been cut down, can sprout anew. Its roots are strong enough. Michael was a good tree that had lost its way, that had strayed from the right path. But his roots, his true nature, were strong enough to allow for a new beginning. If you've read this far, I thank you with all my heart for listening to my story, for giving me your valuable time. I hope it has touched you in some way, encouraged you, or made you think. I also want to thank the Grandparents' Voices channel for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak out and share my eventful life with you. If you liked it, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a like. Comment below which beautiful city you're watching from and what time it is for you. And if you know someone who absolutely needs to hear this story, who might be going through something similar, please share this video. Every day, there's a new story here. And who knows if the next one isn't even more similar to yours, a story that can inspire you. A firm hug from this old man who has learned that even in the darkest hours, a sunrise always awaits us. Always a new day. Always a new chance. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can write more stories like this. Thanks a lot in advance. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd really love to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments. I'm always curious to know what you think. Oh, and let me know where you've heard this story. If you want to hear more life stories like this, like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many more waiting for you. Big hugs, and see you next time.